Good day. This is the second part of the lecture on morphology. In the first part, we had looked at what is morphology, which is the study of morphemes. We looked at morphemes, morphs, and allomorphs of a morpheme. In this section, we will go a little further into different types of morphemes. Morphemes can be broadly divided into two, free and bound morphemes. Free morphemes are those that can stand alone. They have meaning on their own. They don't need to be combined with anything else. So they actually stand as independent words. So it's a word, it's also a morpheme. Bound morphemes cannot normally stand alone. They have to be attached to another morpheme or combination of morphemes. Now let us look at some examples. In the first word, that is reopen, it is re plus open. Here, re is a bound morpheme. It can't stand on its own. Whereas open is a free morpheme. It's a word on its own. It has full meaning on its own. It can stand by itself. Whereas re has to be combined with open or with some other free morpheme. In the second example, tourist. It can be divided into tour plus ist. Here tour is a free morpheme. It's a word on its own. It can stand by itself. And ist is a bound morpheme. So tour plus ist, tourist. One free morpheme and one bound morpheme each. Now free morphemes can be further subdivided into two, lexical morpheme and functional morphemes. Now, as we already mentioned, free morphemes are words on their own. They are independent words. So, when we say lexical and functional morphemes, these are actually the same as lexical and functional words. We will go into what are lexical and functional words in a different lesson in greater detail, but here a simple definition. Lexical morpheme refers to the ordinary nouns, adjectives and verbs that carry the content of meaning. These are the words which we also call content words. So nouns, adjectives, verbs, these have lexical meaning. Lexicon means dictionary. So lexical meaning means a meaning that can be described in a dictionary. So nouns, adjectives and verbs are lexical morphemes. They have meanings that can be clearly defined in a dictionary. They can even be translated into another language. But functional morphemes are functional words. These are what we usually sometimes call functional words. They include parts of speech such as conjunctions, prepositions, articles and pronouns which don't, you can't really say what is the meaning of a or an or the, right? You can just say what is its function. So functional words are characterized by a particular grammatical function. Now if you look at a preposition like on doesn't have a meaning by itself. In different contexts, it can mean different things. If you say on a particular day, there on refers to time. But if you say on the shelf or on the table, it is referring to place. So like that, these are words that don't have lexical meaning exactly, but rather have functional meanings. And these are also words that cannot be easily translated into another language. So free morphemes can be divided into lexical morphemes and functional morphemes. Bound morphemes are also called affixes. Now you are familiar with this term, affixes. Affix means to fix something onto something else, right? To combine something with something else. So bound morphemes cannot stand by themselves. They have to be affixed. They have to be combined with something else. That's why they are also called affixes. Now, when you attach an affix to something else, that is called a stem. So, affixes are like leaves on a tree. Leaves are usually attached to a stem. The stem more or less stands by itself, but the leaf has to be attached to the stem. Similarly, affixes have to be attached to a stem. Now, what exactly is a stem? A stem is not necessarily a free morpheme. A stem could be a free morpheme. It could be a combination of a free and one or more bound morphemes. So, whatever an affix is attached to is called a stem. And in the case of long words, in the case of big words, you can actually divide them. You can take away their affixes one by one, and you can see that one affix is attached to a stem. And then this stem itself can be broken down into affixes and stems. So when you break it down like that, finally you reach one stem that cannot be further subdivided. That stem would be a free morpheme. That stem would be a very small word. It cannot be broken down any further, and that stem is called the root of that word. So if you take a longer word and you break it down into its constituent morphemes, you can clearly see how each affix is attached to a stem, and then when you break it down again and again, finally you reach a stem that cannot be further divided. That is called the root of that word. I will come to an example of that in a moment, but before that, let's talk about types of affixes. You are familiar with these. Affixes can be divided into three main types: prefixes, suffixes, and infixes. Of these, prefixes and suffixes are very common in English. A prefix, as you may know, is an affix that is attached at the beginning of a stem. For example, in the word reopen, it is re plus open. Open is the free morpheme. It is also the stem to which we attach the affix re. And because re comes in the beginning of the word, it is attached at the beginning of the stem open. This re in reopen is a prefix. And a suffix is an affix that is attached at the end of a stem. Again, tourist. Tour plus ist. Here, the affix ist is attached to the stem tourist, but it is attached at the end of the stem, and so it is an example of a suffix. Infixes are affixes that are inserted in the middle of a stem. Instead of being in the beginning or the end, it is in the middle, and these kind of affixes are not very common in English. They are seen in some other languages, like certain Native American languages, and Greek, and there is a language called Tagalog, which is spoken in certain parts of Philippines. So in these languages, infixes are more common, whereas in English they are not really common. Some texts even say that there are actually no infixes in English, but some texts would consider an example like the word passers-by. Now, passers-by is the plural of the noun passerby, somebody who passes by, passerby. And the plural of passerby is not passerbys but passers-by. So here we have the stem, that is passerby, and the affix which is added here is the letter S. So usually, like in the case of boys, girls, the plural suffix is added at the end. It comes as a suffix. But here it comes as an infix. It comes in the middle of the stem. Passerby becomes passers-by. So the S added here can be considered an infix. There is one more type of uncommon affix, which is called the circumfix. This is also not very common in English. In a circumfix, you need an affix to be added to both the beginning and the end of a word simultaneously. That means prefix and a suffix have to be added to a word. This kind of a construction is sometimes called a circumfix. Circum as in encircling or embracing. So it is as if the word is being encircled from both sides by affixes. An example is the word embolden. Embolden. The verb embolden can be broken down into M plus bold plus N. M, that is the prefix. Bold is the free morpheme, it is the root of the word, and N is the suffix. But this cannot be actually emboldened, cannot be divided at the first level into either M plus bolden or embold plus En. That's not how it is combined. It's not like first you have the word bold, then it becomes bolden, then embolden. No. Neither is it bold, embold, embolden. No. Neither of that is correct. From bold, you proceed directly to embolden. So that means the prefix and the suffix have to be added simultaneously. And this is an example of a circumfix. They have to be added together. Other such examples are enlighten, enliven, etc. Now that we have mentioned what is a bound morpheme and a free morpheme, and how bound morphemes or affixes combine together to form larger words, or rather, from the other side, we can say that larger words can be broken down into bound and free morphemes. Now let us look at the process by which this is done. In the previous lesson, we said that the process of breaking a word down into its constituent morphemes is called segmentation. So here is an example of a segmentation. Earlier, we had a larger word and then we just broke it down into separate morphemes. But now we are going to break it down in a very systematic manner. Here is an example, unknowingly. This is the larger word, unknowingly. And you know quite well that it can be broken down into 4 morphemes. Un plus no plus ing plus ly. Now, how does this combination happen? First, unknowingly has to be broken down into un and knowingly. It's not unknowing plus ly. It is actually un and knowingly. Un is the prefix and knowingly is the stem. This is the first level of segmentation. At the next level, again, we have to separate a stem and an affix. Here, it is knowingly has to be broken down into knowing plus ly. So, knowing is the stem and ly is the affix, which in this case is a suffix. Now, we have the stem knowing, which has to be broken down even further. We break it down into know plus ing. Know is again the stem and ing is the affix, again a suffix. Then finally we have the word know. Now know cannot be broken down any further. So know is the kind of stem which cannot be further subdivided. Therefore, it is the root of the word unknowingly. Know is the root of the word unknowingly. So here the word unknowingly is composed of 4 morphemes, of which one, that is know, is a free morpheme, and the other 3, un, ly and ing, are all bound morphemes. Un, ing, ly. These are all bound morphemes. No is the only free morpheme here. So we have managed to segment the word unknowingly into its constituent morphemes by following different levels of segmentation and trying to find out which affix goes with which stem. And finally, we have come down to the root of the word, which is the free morpheme no. Now, it becomes easier if you imagine it in an inverted manner. If you start from the word no, and how do we reach unknowingly? That makes things clearer, perhaps. So, no, you don't combine it with unknown. From no, you don't suddenly go to unknown, right? That's a rather strange word. It's not that it doesn't exist, but usually that's not how you go. No plus ing, knowing. That's the first level. Then knowing plus ly, knowingly. And then finally, knowingly plus un, unknowingly. That is how the word was formed, and that is how we have to break it down. So here is an example of the segmentation of a word. Maybe in some exercises you can look at some other words and do the segmentation. But don't worry, this is not something that is usually asked for your exams. Usually you are given a larger word and you are asked either questions like how many morphemes are there in this word, or which are the free morphemes, or which are the bound morphemes. Those are the kind of morphology for your exams. But I am showing you this process of segmentation so that it is clear to you, so that you can understand how words are formed. In another section, we will discuss the process of word formation in much greater detail. But for now, this is just an example of how we segment words into their constituent morphemes by looking at the affixes, stems, and coming down to the root of the word. Thus, to sum up the points that I have made in this lesson, morphemes can be divided into two major sections: free morphemes and bound morphemes. Of these, free morphemes are independent words, whereas bound morphemes have to be combined with another morpheme or a group of morphemes. Free morphemes can be further subdivided into lexical morphemes and functional morphemes. Bound morphemes, they are also called affixes. They can be further subdivided into prefixes, suffixes, and sometimes infixes. Affixes have to be attached to a stem. So the free morpheme, or the combination of morphemes to which an affix is attached, is called a stem. And you try to subdivide stems into their constituent affixes and stems. Finally, you reach a stem that cannot be further subdivided, and such a stem that can stand by itself, which is a free morpheme, which cannot be further subdivided, is called a root. That is the root of that particular word. Okay, thank you for watching this lesson. I hope it was clear. You can ask comments. You can ask your doubts in the comment section. If you have any confusions or if you want more explanation, you can let me know. And there will be one more small lecture on morphology coming soon. Thank you.